So, good morning and God bless you all. I I just got out of the hospital um, 2 days ago, and I just had lunch, which was very wonderful because in the hospital, the hospital food is not really that great, and I was there for 3 weeks, and it was really unbelievably boring there and so on. And I was there basically because of my back pain, but still they couldn't really tell me what it was. I just told them that I think it's neuropathic pain because the only medication that works is gabapentin, and that's very dangerous. I thought gabapentin is okay because it's not a benzodiazepine, but the gabapentin is also called Lyrica and pregabalin or pregabalin, and it is basically a precursor in the body to GABA, which is gamma aminobutyrate or gamma aminobutyric acid, which is um, it relates to your well-being, emotions, and so on. So the GABA system must be balanced, otherwise you become unbalanced. And the problem is that many medications change the GABA system, and if you take like prescription opiates for a long time, you will get problems with your GABA system, and you cannot experience joy anymore. There is no joy in your life anymore if that happens. So yeah, I was in the hospital for 3 weeks because it got so bad. Psychologically, I got so bad, and that happened exactly after I watched, or exactly at the time that I watched Father Vincent Lampert, The Truth or the Reality About Exorcisms. It's on my channel. It's like 4 videos in the past. It's called Father Vincent Lampert, The Reality of Exorcisms. So exorcism is a ministry, just like deliverance is a ministry, and doing missionary work is a ministry, I think, and so on. So this is real. And for all the people that still don't believe me or listen to these videos to try to disprove what I'm saying, I can pretty easily prove to you that demons exist. Pretty easily, I can do that. Give me a second. So for everybody that still don't believe that this could be real, I'm going to read to you now one of hundreds of thousands of books on the occult, and this is basically a book that is basically an introduction for the occult. It's basically um, an introductory book about the occult, written by Edward Alexander Crowley, or Crowley, whatever his name was. So he writes, Introduction, Magic. So this is from the book Magic with a CK in Theory and Practice. He writes, magic is the highest, most absolute, and most divine knowledge of natural philosophy, advanced in its works and wonderful operations by a right understanding of the inward and the occult virtue of things, so that true agents, being applied to proper patience, strange and admirable effects will thereby be produced. Whence the magicians are profound and diligent searchers into nature. They, because of their skill, know how to anticipate an effect the which to the vulgar shall seem to be a miracle. So, and then it goes on and on and on and on and on, introduction, then there is a poem of sorts. It's a hymn to the god Pan, like in Peter Pan, who is associated with Satan. And Pan, the god Pan, is also that's where the word panic comes from the god Pan, because he was so terrifying. So, and then it goes on and on and on, and somewhere he says his definition of magic is the art and science to cause changes to occur in conformity with your willpower. So that's the definition of magic by Aleister Crowley. Again, magic is the art and science to change nature with your willpower, in conformity to your will. So that was his definition of magic. Many people have said it's a bad definition, because by that definition you could also say making yourself ham and eggs is a magical act, which Aleister Crowley said it is. But if you begin to think in that direction, then you begin to become then you will end up in moral relativism, which is or solipsism, which is even stupider. So solipsism would be where you think that I am the only real consciousness and everybody else is just an actor. They have no feelings, they are just like animals. And it's very easy to get in that thinking, like the Nazis did it with the whole Germany, to keep them in that thinking. So why does that lead to moral relativism? It's just a progressive thing. If you think that everything is a magical act, in the end you think that using magic is the greatest thing to do, because people do it unconsciously all the time. So if you think in that way, that opens you up to way worse philosophies. So then it goes on. This book is for all, for every man, woman and child. My former work has been misunderstood and its scope limited. By my use of technical terms, it has attracted only too many dilettantes and eccentrics, weaklings, seeking in magic an escape from reality. I myself was first consciously drawn to the subject in this way, and it has repelled only too many scientific and practical minds, such as I most designed to influence. But magic is for all. I have written this book to help the banker, the pugilist, the biologist, the poet, the navvy, the grocer, the factory girl, the mathematician, the stenographer, the golfer, the wife, the consul, and all the rest, to fulfill themselves perfectly, each in his or her own proper function. Let me explain in a few words how it came about that I blazoned the word magic with a CK upon the banner that I have borne before all my life. Before I touched my teens, I was already aware that I was the beast whose number is 666. I didn't. What? He said, what? Before I touched my teenage years, I was already aware that I was the beast whose number is 666. I did not understand in the least what that implied, but it was passionately ecstatic sense of identity. Good for you. Good for you. In my third year at Cambridge, I devoted myself consciously to the great work. understanding thereby the work of becoming a spiritual being, free from constraints, accidents, and deceptions of material existence. I found myself at a loss for a name to designate my work, just as H. P. Blavatsky some years earlier. Theosophy, spiritualism, occultism, mysticism, all involved undesirable connotations. I therefore chose the name Magic with a CK, as essentially the most sublime and actually the most discredited of all the available terms. I swore to rehabilitate magic, to identify it with my own career, and to compel mankind to respect, love, and trust that which they scorned, hated, and feared. I have kept my word, but the time is now come for me to carry my banner into the thick of the press of human life. I must make magic the essential factor in the life of all. In presenting this book to the world, I must then explain and justify my position by formulating a definition of magic and setting forth its main principles in such a way that all may understand instantly their souls, their lives, in every relation with every other human being and every circumstance, depend upon magic. And the right comprehension and right application thereof. Number 1. Definition. Magic is the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. There are way better definitions, but that was his definition of magic. But by that definition you could also say cooking a meal is a magical act, which maybe is true, because you first have to have the idea of what you want to cook. It first have to be existing in your head, and by using magical tools like an oven or a stove and so on, and with these magical tools you then make yourself ham and eggs. So by that definition, even cooking is a magical act. And maybe he's right, I don't know. So it's just that most people don't realize how important the mental processes are, and they just run around in the outside world and they're running in invisible walls. I was blessed before because it happened so fast in my life. It disintegrated so fast. Within 15 years I was basically destroyed. So so his definition of magic is the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with the will. Illustration. It is my will to inform the world of certain facts. Within my knowledge, I therefore take magical weapons, pen, ink, and paper. I write incantations, these sentences, in the magical language, i.e., that which is understood by the people I wish to instruct. I call forth spirits such as printers, publishers, booksellers, and so forth, and constrain them to convey my message to those people. The composition and distribution of this book is thus an act of magic, by which I cause changes to take place in conformity with my will. So that's the introduction to the book Magic in Theory and Practice. It is 464 pages. Therefore, I'm not going to go into that all because it's huge. I'm just giving you the impressum, the what's all in there, so that you might understand that this is not a book for children. That this is not wishful thinking. This is a real book about a real topic. So you cannot tell me that the topic of black magic is not real, because the just for the fact because there are tens of thousands of books, or rather there are tens of thousands of authors, each of them obsessed their lifetime with magic, and each of them wrote like several dozen books. Like for example, Manly Palmer Hall, he wrote many books, really. So the contents, so the contents is his poem number 1, then prefatory note, then introduction, which I just read to you, then chapter number 0, the magical theory of the universe, chapter number 1, the principles of ritual, and under there it says the object of all ritual is the uniting of the macrocosm with the microcosm. So this is Kabbalism again. In the language of mysticism, union with God. So number 2, the formulae of the elemental weapons. A classification of all formulae under the heading of the elemental weapons. The wand, the cup, the dagger, and the pentacle. Number 3, the formula of tetragrammaton. Number 4, the formula of Alhim, also that of Alim. Formulae of consecration and rearrangement. Okay, excuse me. So what's going on here? So the formula of LAO, the formula of the neophyte, the formula of the Holy Grail, and Abrahadabra, which means that which I speak becometh. That's what abracadabra means in Hebrew, or Avrahadabra means that what I speak into existence. So like God did it. So the formula of IAO, I'm not sure what that is. The formula of the neophyte, the formula of the Holy Grail, and abracadabra of certain words, formula of vitriol, and so on and so forth. Some remarks on the magical memory. Then there is number 8 of equilibrium, number 9 of silence and secrecy, number 10 of the gestures, like this, or this, which is the incantation of Harpocrates, which is the god of silence. And according to legend, Aleister Crowley invoked Harpocrates in his home for 2 weeks, and then he went out into the streets naked and nobody saw him. That's one of the legends of Aleister Crowley. So of the gestures, then number 11 of Our Lady Babylon and the beast whereon she rides. Also concerning transformations, of the bloody sacrifice, of the banishing and the purifying, of the consecrations, then the oath of the invocation, of the change to the spirit with some account of constraints and curses occasionally necessary. So you see, I'm just stopping here right now, you see that this stuff is so voluminous. There is so much behind that I couldn't explain that stuff in an hour-long video. It's just too much material. So yeah, that's our good friend. Like Aaron Hubbard said, my very good friend, the late Aleister Crowley. That was L. Ron Hubbard. He said that in a BBC interview, I think. He spoke. Yeah. Anyway, so these people are into this guy who was in favor of human sacrifice, which is just insane. I mean, how bored do you have to be interested in something like that? Um, I, I mean, and all these people that are involved with that, they basically you have to throw them in jail and throw away the key. People like Oprah Winfrey, like the list goes on and on and on. Ellen DeGeneres. Just look at the flight log to Jeffrey Epstein's island. And nowadays you don't hear much about Jeffrey Epstein anymore. I wonder why that is. And I'm pretty sure that Ghislaine Maxwell will go scot-free out of that situation. They will not rot in a bunker somewhere. So, yeah. So, for all the people that don't believe in what I'm talking about, that there's no such thing as Jesus, there's no such thing as magic, you basically you're trapped in your own intellect, and you only think with the intellect. When you open your heart up to the spiritual world, and you can feel the spiritual world all around you, I don't say that that's a good thing to do, like doing yoga to the point where you are so sensitive to other people's emotions that you basically can read their minds. And then the more you hear and the more you understand, the less you want to talk. Even I think St. Paul said, much talk is of evil. And sometimes I would really like to make a vow of silence for like a month at least. Because in reality there is nothing to say. Nothing. It's just there's this reality, you found it, fine. Stop talking about it. But the only reason I still make videos about it is if that benefits only one person, then it's worth the time to do that. That's what I believe, and there is no doubt in my mind that demons are real. I just wrote from a book of a guy who called himself, or the papers called him, the wickedest man alive, or the wickedest man in the world. He called himself the Beast 666. His signature was Baphomet. I mean, this guy was one of the very highly decorated Mason, and in all these fraternities and so on. Of course, he founded his own religion, but not to make money. He founded his own religion to basically put an end to Christianity, which he hated with a passion. Like all these people do that. And why is that? Manly Palmer Hall too. Manly Palmer Hall hated Christianity with a passion. So why? If there's nothing truthful to it, then who cares? Like Nicholas Schreck said, we don't care what Christians do because you're not a threat to us. But I don't think that that's true. In a spiritual way, it's the only way to do spiritual warfare. You have to first become a Christian, and you have to understand what it means. Spiritual warfare is real. The spirits want to make you nuts, and the more you sin and the more you fall away from God, the more authority the demons have over you. So yeah. So I just read a book about a topic that doesn't exist. The topic being magic, black magic, and so on. So I just read you a book about a topic that should not exist. Magic. And there is even stuff in that like how to make a wand, a real wand, with astral projection, which is very dangerous. The wand of Aleister Crowley, I think, is being sold for about £150,000 or euros. Again, the wand of Aleister Crowley is being sold for about 100 to 150,000 euros, maybe more, I'm not sure. The guy who has it is the grandson of someone who knew him, and there's a funny story about that. He asked him if he would go into meditation and point in the direction where there is an evil thing in the room, because the room was full with antiques, and behind the bookshelves, behind the books, in one of the bookshelves, there was the wand of Aleister Crowley lying there. And he closes his eyes, goes into meditation, and immediately stretches his hand out, goes backwards without opening his eyes, and leaps grabs behind the big books, and and has his wand in his hand, and he said to him, "It's screaming for blood. It wants blood." So the guy went into the garden and pricked himself with a rose and put a little blood onto the wand. Isn't that an insane story? But that's a real story from the guy who has the wand. I saw it. It was on YouTube. They interviewed him. Maybe he was the grandson of Gerald Gardner. I'm not sure. Or maybe the great grandson. I'm not sure. Anyway. So yeah. And there are thousands of these books and much more complicated stuff that was just like a basic introduction in what magic is. But if you are trapped in the intellect, if you think that you're so smart and that this is all baloney, that is not real, and that's obviously not real because a fourth of all the human population or something believe in Jesus, so they are all stupid. There's nothing to that. And to a certain degree, I can absolutely understand that people think that way because the church has been so corrupted. But that's throwing out the baby with the bathwater, because the gospel is still real and still applies, and it's a part of the law of God. So anyway, thanks for listening, and I wish you a great Easter. Bye.